Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, we've had really a lot of technical problems, and we hope that this continues to work. Um, we want to welcome you all to our Global Women's Strike Anarchist Bookfair workshop, which is called a Care Income for People and Planet. And we're going to be telling you about the international campaign that's demanding it. Um, we've got speakers Sarah Calloway from Women of Colour in the Global Women's Strike. We hope Claire Glassman from Winvisible, Women with Visible and Invisible Disabilities, will be able to get on. There's a bit of a technical problem. And there's Sam Weinstein from Payday, a network of men working with the Global Women's Strike. Anyway, we'll see how. And then we want to have plenty of time for question and answers. We really do want to hear people's questions and comments. So hopefully that will all work. Please keep an eye out for links that you'll see come up for books, videos, and other articles you might like to follow up. And you'll see also a book list where we've got a list of anti-racist books. All our books have an anti-racist angle, and they deal with various aspects of women's unpaid and low-paid caring work. I just wanted to say from myself, I'm a single mum. I'm a carer for a friend with schizophrenia and my elderly mum who is caring for my elderly dad. And I've been campaigning with the Global Women's Strike and the Wages for Housework campaign since about the mid-80s. And I came to it from the anti-US cruise missile Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp. And also there was a South London Women's Hospital occupation to stop its closures. And I was drawn to the Wages for Housework campaign because of the way it connected anti-war, anti-racism and women. Selma James, this is Selma's anthology. Selma launched the Wages for Housework campaign in 1972, and the campaign started the strike, the Global Women's Strike, in 2000, demanding investing in caring and not killing. And we've been campaigning for financial recognition for unwaged caring work for over 50 years. Some figures just to give you: in 1980, the ILO published figures showing that women do 2/3 of the world's work for 5% of the income, and we own less than 1% of the world's assets. So if you want a picture of who's doing the work in the world and who is facing the poverty, it's extremely good figure. But 50 years later, women and girls are still doing more than 3/4 of all the unpaid work. And the greatest part of that is done in countries of the global south. For example, women in Africa are growing 80% of the food that people are eating. Women's caring work produces and reproduces the workers of the world, the whole human race. We all know it from the work that our mums, sisters, aunties, grannies do. And it's an absolute outrage. And the conservative value for the caring work is probably more now than 11 trillion annually, more than the entire tech industry. But there has never been a suggestion that women should get any of that money. We just get told we need to go out and get a job and leave our caring work, from breastfeeding our babies to looking after our elders, to attending the land. We're told just go out and get a job. With the COVID virus, everyone's really seen just how dependent we all are on caring for survival in our homes, in our neighbourhoods, hospitals, care services, and for our environments. And we've seen the devastation of, the deaths and illnesses people have when that caring work is ignored and underfunded and devalued. And it's scandalous that there's been no relief package from the government for carers. They only just pile more work on us. And this on top of all the other pandemics that we have been, have been facing, which is the poverty, racism and violence, domestic violence, war and displacement, and the climate emergency. This massive caring contribution for society really should be a source of power and recognition for women, but instead it's used to exploit and impoverish us, and we are the poorest sex in every country. It also means that those we care for are treated with very little respect by the governments and corporations. And obviously we're fighting and campaigning for that all to change. Um, we've seen that with the brutality of the way caring has been treated, means with the COVID virus, means that many people have been locked down with no money, no food, and sometimes losing their home and have been left starving. And many women have had to go into prostitution to make sure that their families are surviving. And we've even hearing reports of children going doing sex work for shoes. Over a million, as you probably know, children are already hungry and living in poverty. Just to say that, to finish on, that we're demanding a care income for all across the planet, to refuse the destitution. And Sarah will say more about it. And I just wanted to quickly say that a care income for us, it's quite different from a universal basic income, which we're not against. But the universal basic income doesn't it prioritizes neither the caring work nor the climate emergency. And we definitely would demand a caring income on top of it. Without the care income the power of the carers and those doing the caring work and those we care for will not change, and we'll fail people and our planet if we don't have the care income, recognition of the caring work financially, financial recognition. There's a lot of lip service going on at the moment about how important caring is and people discussing caring, but no one, virtually no one, is talking about the money and the resources coming to the carers, to mothers and other carers, as our right for that work. So anyway, I'm going to move on. Sarah Calloway from Women of Colour and the Global Women's Strike is next. Are you there, Sarah? Ah, you're on mute, Sarah.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Kay. That was great. I'll just add on to what Kay said, how we've been organizing internationally for a care income. In 2019, we were invited to take part in the European Green New Deal, which is urging governments to introduce a care income for all, every gender, in rural and urban areas, and absolutely globally. This demand is really important because what it does is bring together caring work done for people with the caring work that people do for the environment, the air, the land, the water, the ecosystems. And this point of the European Green New Deal makes it unique to others that we know about. The demand for care income is central to climate justice, which, as we know, is literally a burning issue, and our lives depend on us, dealing with that. We believe a care income would be a major step in transforming people and the situation for the planet. It would change the priorities away from exploiting and just sheer profit, and change that priority to whether or not people are thriving and whether or not the environment is thriving. So in March, this past March, we launched the Global Care Income Campaign. There's a fantastic webinar which you can see online, and we'll put it up in the chat later. Um, it's in about 14 languages, and it's been signed by people in over 30 countries, and organizations, many prominent organizations. As Kay said, the pandemic has put a spotlight on how essential care is. And it's central, but as Kay said, they often don't say that the wealth needs to come to us. And I just mentioned, the garment workers, the women in Leicester, were working for like £3 an hour, which is an absolute scandal. That's the situation that women are in, and this is not even the global South. That's how bad it is. And of course, women of color, immigrant women, poor communities suffer the worst. And, often the solution is put when we raise caring work, despite the focus on it, the solution put is that somehow it's caring work that's holding us back and is keeping us down, rather than the fact that the not paying for it, the fact that we are not paid for caring work, that is what's holding not only women back, but the whole society is held back. So we want to change that. And we know that the care for the elderly, for the children, for vulnerable, for the land, all that has to be the priority. So if we aren't demanding money and resources, then we're not serious. And for example, in the global south, it could take the form of clean running, clean, accessible water for everyone, free health care, sanitation. All those resources would completely lift and transform societies. Um, I just wanted to say about the billionaires. There's really a pandemic of billionaires. They have too much money, way too much money, and the money they make is from polluting the world, exploiting people and animals, and also creating war in order to do that exploitation. The eight top billionaires own as much as the combined wealth of the poor half of the human race. Now that's absolutely obscene, and we have to end it. This is a moment when it's crucial that we act collectively. We are we have to keep in mind that the governments are trying to use the money to shift it to corporations and multinationals like Serco rather than putting it for the health and welfare of communities. And also, they're using it for police crackdowns, for surveillance, and we want to put a stop to that. So I just wanted to give you quickly some of the ideas of some idea of how women internationally are using the care income. Domestic workers in Peru, who are part of the Global Women's Strike Network, said that, we work in our homes and the homes of others. And as a trade union, we campaign for legislation based on the ILO Convention 189, which recognizes us as workers with basic human rights. They just won a fantastic campaign to get this legislation passed, which would give them all the rights that they've been demanding. And they combine their demands as domestic worker with a care income, and they've been saying that as carers, they are entitled to that money. It would end poverty, and which they say is a priority. And in fact, many of the domestic workers in Peru are indigenous women. They're from the poorest area, and they say that they're driven to be domestic workers as one of few options, and the work they do creates space and time for others to build their careers. So they want to end the sort of triple workload that they're having to deal with, and they're using the demand for a care income to help with that. In Thailand, there's the Southern Peasants Federation and also women human rights defenders who are part of the Global Women's Strike Network, and they say they care for the land and the soil as much as they care for families. In the West, we are taught to see ourselves as separate from the environment, but it's really not like that. We are all interconnected. And what they've been doing is working to reclaim and regenerate land uh, poisoned by corporations. In an anti-mining community, one woman describes her workday. She gets up at 2 a.m. to cut rubber on a plantation. She comes home at 6 a.m. to prepare breakfast, to do housework, and work in the vegetable garden. She's also a campaigner fighting against the mining company, which has been poisoning the land for decades. And the situation is really horrific because there have been many disappearances and murders of human rights activists, many women and mothers who've been targeted. So it's the work they're doing is really life threatening. So on top of her workload, she has to deal with this justice work, and she says that when she goes to bed at 9 at night, and that's her worrying time. She worries about money, about debt, about her children, about whether or not she's going to get arrested and imprisoned, and it's just like a real grind. And I think that's what we have to have this in mind. This is the workload of women in the global south. It's just horrendous. And she said that a care income would buy her time. She says time is money, and the care income would buy her time. And I think that's just right. Also in Bangkok, a woman who's a taxi driver and an organizer, and she's also the chair of an organization that's fighting against slum housing. And she describes her workday, and at the end, she says, "We don't lack capacity, we lack money." And we totally agree with that. We think closer to home, we think, for example, farmers here need a care income, so they can change the way they treat the soil, the animals in the rural environment. And many farmers want to do that, but they need the resources to be able to make that change. They're the HS2 protesters who are doing a great job of calling out this absolutely grotesque project that's costing billions. And the people who are living in the woodlands and in the trees, why shouldn't they have a care income for the environmental work they're doing for all of us? There are mothers fighting to keep their children. There's just been a workshop about that. They need a care income to escape poverty and to increase their power in the family courts and also against social services and sometimes backed up by the police. Um, at our center, there's a group called the All Africa Women's Group, women asylum seekers who fled from war, rape, and ecological devastation caused by Western governments and corporations. They need a care income. They have a right. You know, we have worked for 500 years for Britain and colonial governments. So the women in that group and the asylum seekers and immigrants and those crossing the ocean, they need a care income to survive. And so we're in a place where we don't have to flee our country because our countries are not being destroyed. I'll just finish off with the Black Lives Matter movement, which of course has really um, fired up the movement and given us power. It was started by women, and the campaigns are often led by women. And within the Black Lives Matter movement, women have been highlighting that protecting our families and communities from racism and police violence is work, and we want a care income for that justice work to protect our kids and to take the knee off our necks everywhere in the world. We believe that a caring society can't be a racist society because a caring society acknowledges each and every one of us, that all of us need care. And that's the end of the hierarchy of race and all the other divisions, because those divisions say that some of us need less and want less, and we totally reject that. And that's why we're calling for a care income to build a caring society. I would just underline Kay's point, unless we're campaigning for the money and resources in our hands, we're not serious. But we think this is a moment where people are moving forward, and we think that a care income, coming together around a care income, can bring all of us forward. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I don't, Claire. I don't know if Claire from Invisible is on yet. Not sure, sadly, but let's go to Sam. Sam from Payday. I can't hear you, Sam. You're on mute, I think. Great.
Claire is there, so I just don't know whether we can hear her. Claire, can you speak? I guess not.
Mm.
All right. I guess I'll go. First, I wanted to say, as Kay said at the beginning, I'm a member of Payday, and Payday is an international network of men working with the Global Women's Strike internationally. We're delighted to endorse the Care Income Now campaign. While the vast majority of carers are women, there are men who do the work and deserve the money like our sisters. But overwhelmingly, men are either a reserve army of labor or locked into jobs that pollute, destroy, or maim the worker and our community. We hate the work and spend our lives trying to avoid it. We want to do something else, and a care income would encourage that and make it possible.
Mm-hmm.
As a retired union operating engineer from Southern Illinois said, you are, quote, trading your body for money, selling your health to support your family, close quote. If you are unemployed, however, your desperation for money drives you back to the job. One guy in front of me waiting to interview for an auto assembly line job said, you'll do anything to get into the motherfucker, and when you're in, you can't wait to get out. We agreed. 2.8 million people die every year from work-related disease and injury, and 374 million suffer non-fatal injuries on the job. The most polluting factories are inevitably located in the poorest areas. Sarah talked about some of that. Bhopal and Chernobyl are two of the best-known industrial disasters, and each costing thousands of lives in their surrounding communities. They are only the tip of the iceberg, if you really want to know. I carry permanent injuries and scars from every manual labor job I ever did. On the blast furnace in the steel mill, The heat was so intense that despite protective clothing, it dried my knuckles out, and I literally had to ply my fingers open every morning. When I blew my nose, it came out black from coke dust, and that continued for weeks after I quit the job. But as the advertisement says, if you want to be, quote, be all you can be, a real man, join the army. That's what they say in the US. They don't want us to know the total number of either military or civilian casualties of endless wars. The US military, the single greatest polluter on earth, has been fighting environmentally devastating wars in the Middle East to protect the most polluting industry of all, oil and gas. Payday has a long history of supporting military refuseniks and whistleblowers such as Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange. Our slogan is refusing to kill or to be killed. That's what we're doing, refusing to kill or be killed. A lot of white and pink collar work is also unnecessary, mind numbing, or support for the deadly physical work I mentioned before. But there are notable examples of men making a fight for the right to be carers or to make things not destructive of society. In the 1970s, faced with downsizing, workers at Lucas Aerospace making military equipment proposed that they stop producing weapons, but instead retool to develop socially useful goods, like solar heating equipment and artificial kidneys. Management refused, and the upper echelons of the union did little to help. Most unions have been unwilling to challenge management's right to produce what they please. Union heads are terrified of both losing their membership and therefore the institution and their own jobs, but also of their members being driven into destitution. Blind to campaigning for something like the care income, they support the employer over the health of members and community alike. But not all. It is wonderful to see that the Bakers Union in the UK have endorsed the care income campaign. That's really a break with the tradition of other unions and shows us the beginning of the way to the future. In Germany, 1.5 million members of IG Metall, a heavy engineering union, went on strike for the right to work only 28 hours per week, at full pay in order to take more responsibility for their families. One union spokesperson said, quote, "We want employers to recognize that traditional gender roles in modern families are changing, and we want workers to have the chance to do the work that is important to society." Obviously, caring work was a lot more important than what was being done in the engineering sector, according to that shop steward. As a union official some years ago, I helped lead the largest pay equity settlement in private industry in the United States. We put the largest classification of women, those who worked in the call center, on the same pay scale as the largest classification of men working in the field, a raise of 13% for those women. Some women got in other fields got as much as 27%. But the most amazing thing about it, frankly, was that once we raised call center pay, men poured into the job. We learned a good lesson. Pay women properly, and the men will come. We don't know what work really is necessary. The military is not. Care work is, and the pandemic has made that absolutely clear to everyone around the world. And a care income is an invitation to do that work and the beginning of finding out about all the rest and what's really necessary. Thank you, Kay.
Great, thanks, Sam. I don't know if we can, if the Anarchist Bookfair team can help us get Claire on. Otherwise, I was just going to try and call her on the phone and see if I could, she could speak through my speakerphone. We just had technical problems, haven't we? Hold on. I'm not sure what else to suggest because it would be great. But if people do have any questions or any comments you want to make or anything, we also wanted to say we hope you'll visit the Global Women's Strike. Oh, here's Claire. Claire, do you want to speak if I put you on the speakerphone here? Here we go. Okay, Claire.
Hi, sorry everyone. We've had some technical problems with the browser.
Is that good, everybody? Can you hear? Yes, Sam's saying yes, Claire. Good.
Okay, so going back to what Sarah was saying, they spend £205 billion on renewing Trident nuclear submarines, which is 10 times what they spend on social care in a year. We are a disabled women's organisation. We're multiracial. We are disabled mums. We're older and younger. We are LGBTQ. And we do a mixture of self-help, benefit rights, getting home care support, anti-discrimination, and campaigning. For example, we're supporting Alison Turner, the daughter-in-law of Errol Graham. He was a black man in Nottingham who starved to death after being cut off employment and support allowance for not going to a benefit assessment interview. In an inaccessible and prejudiced world, disability is hard work, and we're entitled to a care income for that work. We've had austerity followed by COVID and an enormous attack on our rights with the COVID measures, where COVID was spread into the care homes. Half of the 42,000 deaths are in care homes. And we're reminded that the Nazis regarded older and disabled people as useless eaters. And they actually had homes for old people called hunger houses where people were starved to death. The government, when they brought in the Coronavirus Act in March, suspended the council's legal obligations to support people at home. And we're campaigning for those rights to be restored, and we're supporting the Rights for Residents campaign, which is relatives of mainly women in care homes, campaigning to be recognised as key workers alongside the paid staff. The daughters are going in to feed mothers. They provide continuity between the paid staff who are often very overstretched and who don't know what's happening day to day. They don't know what happened yesterday, and the relatives are the ones who are filling them in. Care services are 85% privatised, and we're treated like commodities who can be bought and sold in care contracts. And disabled and older people want the right to decide what support we get from whom, not a social worker doing rationing and making cuts, calling it independent living. Family carers are demanding a living wage. Our children, our relatives are not a nuisance. Those are valuable relationships which we want to put time into. And often why people find it hard to do is because it is not financially supported, and family carers are exploited to the max by councils and by the government instead of getting the support that we are entitled to. Some feminist organisations have put forward suggestions for a so-called care economy, which is basically professionalising everything and warehousing children and older people in institutions so that women can go out to work to do something more meaningful. And we're against that kind of top-down planning, which is not valuing the individual relationships, as Kay mentioned earlier. Everyone needs care throughout life, and the care income takes care work out of the patronising picture of disabled people being patted on the head, and makes it broader and global. And some people have put forward free independent living paid for through national taxation, which is good. We support that, but we also want family carers to be supported as well. Yeah. Because a lot of disabled people want trusted friends and family to be the ones looking after them, not someone from outside who doesn't know them well. And a living wage gives women the option to opt in or opt out as they feel. Okay, sorry about the technicalities again.
Great, thank you, Claire. If we've got, there's, anyway, you can, good. Okay.
Okay, I don't know whether you've seen, but there are some questions in the chat.
Yeah. Sorry, I've missed. Do you want, are you following those, Sarah or Sam, and you want to? What are some of the links, you and others, including them? What are some of the links? Okay. I think the links, sorry, I was just saying, I think the links are going to be put up in the, for those watching, I think you will see some links being put up. Sarah, can you see the other questions? Did you want to answer the other one? Sarah, I think you're on mute. You're on mute.
Well, someone says, in my country, women are treated as nothing by the men. How can I help build a feminist movement where one does not exist? It doesn't say which country. Do you want to answer, Kay?
Well, I mean, the care income, the statement, the open letter for the care income, it would be great if you wanted to have a look at that. I mean, of the 14 languages Sarah was talking about, I don't know if one of those languages could be yours, but if you could help us, circulate that, amongst networks, friends, organizations, calling for a care income. I mean, our experience when we go on our high street with our demands for a care income, because we also had a petition calling for a living wage for mothers and other carers. I mean, our stalls, we just have loads of women come to our stalls. They're rushing past because they're going to work or they're doing their lunch break. But I would say that might be a very helpful, tool to use, and it would be great, in fact, to get more people, signing on to the care incomes statement. You want to add anything, Sarah or Sam? I can't.
Well,
I would just, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
No, you go, Sam. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the great things about the care income is that it offers possibilities to men, which is part of what I was talking about. So it may be useful to you as you do organizing among women, putting together a feminist movement. It may be useful to you to have the care income as part of the way you're doing the organizing, because you can say to the men, this is a possibility for you as well. You just have to change the way that we are doing things in society. And as I was pointing out before, the men are, in general, tend to be very unhappy with what they're doing anyway, and often they take it out on the women, which is outrageous. But the fact of the matter is they're not happy with what's happening to them. And part of the case that we're trying to make in relation to the care income is that this is a way that they can also find a solution to the problems that face both women and men.
I was just going to add that, the idea, there's always a women's movement everywhere in the world. Even it may not look like it, but women are fighting. And I was reminded of in Kenya when the coffee plantations, which are like the multinationals, they have women. The men were on a very low wage, but the women were doing the work for nothing, women and children. And the women did a fight. They pulled up the coffee plants and they planted instead the food, beans and plantain and the food that they needed for their families and communities. So they had to fight the corporations to do that. They had to take on the men, and they got the men, in fact, to back them. The low paid men back the women. And they were also up against the police and the authorities because at that time the law said that pulling up a coffee plant could land you 7 years in prison. So it was really serious. And, women are just fighting. But the trouble is that our movements and our struggles are invisible. And very often, what calls itself the feminist movement, I guess I would call it the narrow or the state feminist movement, they are not paying attention and they're not making the struggle of grassroots women a priority. So that's one fight we have, is to make sure that the women's movement, the real women's movement, the grassroots women's movement, which is everywhere demanding resources and money and so on, that has to be prioritized. And somebody else mentioned there was a sex strike in Liberia that ended the civil war. I only know a little bit about that, but the sort of sex strike and also naked protests have been used by women all over, particularly like in Nigeria. They used naked protests to confront the, Shell and the oil exploiters.
Okay. Well, there's quite a lot of questions that are coming through. Somebody has said, I'm sorry, I don't know more about this. Someone mentioned the sex strike that ended the Liberian civil war. I don't know if it's something you care to talk about. This is the Anarchist Bookfair part. They're relying on another chat to kind of put through to us, I think. The country hasn't been mentioned that the person was from. Someone says, how can I help women who have been left in conflict zones because the men and boys had to flee? Caring is just not seen as labour nor of economic value, even still in 2020. Are there any effective examples of local UK governments working in collaboration with community projects, e.g. female prison turning into women's centre? Well, anybody on the panel want to answer that? Caring is not just seen as labour nor of economic value, even still in 2020. Absolute. I mean, that's what we were saying, is that, there's no income, there's no recognition, financial recognition for the work that we're doing. And that's what we're demanding. And I mean, what we're trying to do is, get our statement around and get people signed on to this. And also where we do try and go on all sorts of workshops and webinars and meetings to try and to get people to join with the demand for an income for the work. Do you see a care income as a way to change relationships between women and men? Well, I think absolutely. I mean, Sam, I don't know if you want to say more on that. You've been saying. Sarah, have you frozen?
No.
No, sorry. Do you want to do some?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing is that it's just like when we have like decent benefits and housing benefit and a safety net, we're not forced out into low wage jobs. And the same, when we have money of our own, housing of our own, resources of our own, we can leave violent men. We don't have to put up with it. And the men know that. And that's why it's really important. Yeah. Money in our hands makes all the difference to the relationships we have. And we know it from our own experience, what we saw our mothers go through, and how, as the generations come on, we've been able in various ways to refuse that violence. But it has to be global, because as long as, for example, women in Africa and Pakistan and India are left in this horrific poverty and horrific violence. I just saw a film about Pakistan yesterday, And unless all of us come up together, we're none of us are safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate that. I do think it would make a huge difference if women had money of their own. It would also make a huge difference to men. Um, One of the ways that it would make a huge difference is now very often in a single wage family where the man is the breadwinner, or even in a dual wage family where the wife is making a wage, but a lot of the time it's a much lower wage than the man is making. And so the man is under the pressure, the possibility of striking and stuff and taking other industrial action or even changing jobs is really a problem because you're taking a risk, right? And it's not only a risk for yourself, but it's a risk for your whole family. If the woman in the house who's doing the caring has an income of her own, um, as Sarah said, she has the ability to leave if necessary, but also she has the serious ability to supplement and to help men so that they can fight for better wages and better working conditions where they are as well. It really does change the relationship. And on top of that, it gives men, as I was saying before, the possibility of switching out of the kind of work that they do, which may be disgusting from a number of different points of view. It may be disgusting because of what it's doing to the community. It may be disgusting because of what it's doing to you. Um, it may just be work that's extremely unpleasant for any number of reasons. And you may have the option of sharing the caring work and getting some of that, and being able to do some of that work and getting some of the money for it as well. So it really does change the relationships in the society in general. And I think that's extremely important. I think we want men, unfortunately, the trade union movement and a lot of liberals have been trying to push women into men's jobs. That has been their solution for pay equity. If you can't get it one way, then you get it by getting the men's jobs. That's frankly just not realistic. And really, what we really want is exactly the opposite. We want men to begin to do the work that women are doing because it's more necessary for the society and it's what will change us into more human people.
Um, I just saw another comment asking if we saw any possible limitations to the care income, and I can't see any
No.
limitations. I see it just opens up the movement, and in every corner of the movement it can be applied, and it can be useful and strengthen our movement, but also it's like a unifying demand. Everybody, women benefit, men benefit, children benefit, everybody is lifted up. And I think there's an idea that, that, well, the NGOs will do it. We have to have a self-help movement that we build from the grassroots, because the NGOs are jobs for a few people, and our demands always get watered down. And I think, Haitian people have pointed out that there are more NGOs in Haiti than anywhere in the world, and yet the poverty continues. So the NGOs kind of live off of our poverty. So we want to do something completely different, and the care income can take us there. And it's universally applicable. Everybody benefits. I think the fear is that working class people, women, and poor people have money in our hands, and they're worried we'll be out of control. And I guess we will be. We'll do things very differently if we have money in our own hands.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something. Somebody's asked, as more male carers become common, will there be a drive to remunerate care work? And I absolutely agree with that. I think that's been our experience in other places, like nursing. Unfortunately, we have to be careful, though, because what has happened in nursing is that men have been able to get the higher degrees and therefore get the higher pay. And often women have been left behind, and we have to make sure that that is not what is done in other areas of caring as well. But I do agree absolutely that when men are doing the work, they're going to fight and it'll be a unified fight between men and women for higher pay for caring.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a carer. Okay, someone says I'm a carer, but 100% of my care allowance is taken by universal credit after I switch to it. We need to end universal credit. We absolutely agree with that. We think it should be scrapped. I know Claire from Invisibles probably made some, they say they have a lot on there. Please do look at the blogs that people have got, because there's a lot of campaigning that's been going on to scrap universal credit. And it is absolutely outrageous that the carer's allowance is just an absolute pittance, and it's outrageous, and you don't always get it anyway, depending on the income, in your family situation. And definitely universal credit should go. We want our income support back, amongst many other benefits, improved, increased, and the conditions being that because it used to be that it was recognition that there was work happening, that we weren't being forced out to a job, and certainly this was for single mothers. Certainly we used to be on income, we could get income support until our kids used to be 18, and then when my kids were it was up till they were 16. But at least it was recognition that having the time to raise your children was an option, that you can do part-time work, so that you didn't have to always be out there on some job. But now, since they cut those benefits, we have no choice. We have to be out there taking the wage jobs, and they've got us over a barrel, because they know very well we can't go back onto benefits, so they can keep the wages really low. They know that we're worried about having our kids taken away because of the poverty, because they know social services are on the rampage against mothers, single mothers especially, to take our children instead of supporting us. And when we often do ask for money and help with that, they turn the tables on us and start investigating us. I mean, there was a workshop before this called by the organization Support Not Separation, which people might want to have a look at if you weren't on this one. And there's been pickets and demonstrations out monthly outside the family courts, putting those courts on trial, and putting the services, that are there on trial, and saying there should be money to support mothers. Anyway, can I say more about Hammersmith and Pullet? Someone asked about councils and community. Okay, final thoughts and wrap up, please. Okay, so any final thoughts then?
Claire that was Claire who wanted to speak, so if you can do her again.
Yeah, let me try her, yeah.
While you're doing that, Kay, can I just remind people to have a look at we have a book list in the Global Women's Strike virtual stall. And a lot of the things we talked about are there for more information.
They're asking us to wrap up, but I just want to say something quickly.
Hold on, Claire. Okay, thanks. Okay. Claire, can you hear? Okay, this is Claire. Can you hear her, Sam, Sarah?
Yeah.
Great, they're saying yes, Claire.
So someone asked, are there any examples of councils and community working together? The one we know of is Hammersmith and Fulham. They abolished charges for social care services. They have a fantastic pilot of free school meals to primary age children, universal, so the children are not stigmatized. And that's paid for by property developers who bought land from the council, and it's written into their contract that they have to subsidise the school meals. And then someone asked about Holloway Prison being turned into a women's centre. That's a bit of misrepresentation. Peabody Housing has bought the site, and it will be mainly unaffordable flats, which people are really cross about. Mm-hmm. And as a kind of trade-off, they're offering some community resources as part of the site, but people won't be able to afford to live there because the rents are too high. So the Peabody tenants are already complaining about rents being too high. So just read the small print about these plans. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Okay, well, okay, so we have to wrap up now, don't we?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you to everybody who's been on.
Sorry, Kay, can we just, there's two events next Wednesday. The women's officer at Cambridge University is sponsoring a talk, and it's on the European Green New Deal, and include, I think Selma James will be on it, and others from the Global Women's Strike. So tune into that. And then on Monday the 19th, some of you seen Steve McQueen's Mangrove 9 feature film. The Global Women's Strike has done interviews with two participants in the Mangrove 9 trial, and we're going to be showing that documentary film on Monday the 16th. And also, if you visit our website, this is a demands from women to the Black Lives Matter movement, with lots of the statistics that we've mentioned today.
That's Monday, the 16th of November, right, Sarah?
Yes, sorry, November.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we say farewell? Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope you can find our email and be in touch with us at the Global Women's Strike as well. And please do find more of these materials all on the Global Women's Strike stall.